My name is Sophia Bennett. I am 31 years old and I'm from Seattle, Washington. For years, I believed marriage meant partnership, support, respect. But I was wrong. Because the man I trusted the most didn't just doubt me, he humiliated me. What he didn't know. He was insulting someone who was quietly sitting on a truth powerful enough to destroy everything he thought he controlled. Have you ever been called useless by the one person who promised to stand beside you? What would you do if your husband slowly convinced everyone around you that you were nothing, while hiding his own failures? Would you argue, fight back? Or would you stay quiet and let him keep talking? Now imagine this. What if the person he mocked every day was actually holding a secret so big it could flip the entire power dynamic overnight? And what if that secret came from your father, the one he thought left you with nothing? Stay with me, because when the truth came out, he wished he never opened his mouth. It didn't happen overnight. That's the scariest part. If he had called me useless on the first day of our marriage, I would have walked out without looking back. But that's not how it started. It was subtle, almost invisible. The kind of change you don't notice until it's already become your reality. At first, it sounded like concern. You don't have to try so hard, Sophia, I'll handle things. Back then, I thought it was love, protection even. I mistook control for care. And slowly, without realizing it, I started stepping back, letting him make more decisions, trusting his judgment over mine. Then the tone shifted. You always overcomplicate simple things. It was said with a small laugh like a joke, but something about it stayed with me. Still, I ignored it. Everyone has bad days, right? But those comments didn't stop. They multiplied. Every little mistake I made, real or imagined, became proof in his eyes, proof that I wasn't capable. Proof that he was the one holding everything together. You forgot to pay that bill. I already told you how to do this. Why do you make everything harder than it needs to be? At some point, I stopped defending myself. Not because he was right, but because I was tired. Tired of explaining, tired of being interrupted, tired of feeling like no matter what I said, it wouldn't matter. And that's when it got worse. Because silence doesn't fix disrespect, it feeds it. He started speaking for me in front of others, finishing my sentences, correcting me even when I wasn't wrong. I remember one dinner at his friend's house. Someone asked me about my work, something I had spent years building. Before I could even answer, he jumped in. Oh, she's still figuring things out. It's nothing serious. I laughed it off in the moment. What else could I do? But inside, something cracked. It wasn't just what he said. It was how easily he said it, like my voice didn't even exist. After that, it became a pattern. Every conversation turned into a stage, and I was the punchline. You know how she is. She gets confused easily. I usually just handle things myself. People would laugh, not cruelly but enough. And slowly I started shrinking. I spoke less, shared less. Doubted more. I began second-guessing things I used to do confidently. Simple decisions suddenly felt overwhelming. I'd ask for his opinion on everything, not because I needed it, but because I was afraid of getting it wrong. That's what his words did. They didn't just hurt, they rewired me. And the worst part? He didn't even see it as cruelty. To him, he was just being honest. Just helping. Just telling the truth. But the truth is, there's a difference between honesty and erosion. And he was slowly eroding me, piece by piece, word by word. Until one day, I caught myself hesitating over something so small, so insignificant, that it stopped me cold. I was standing in the kitchen, holding two identical cups, trying to decide which one to use, and I actually thought, what would he say if I chose the wrong one? That's when it hit me. This wasn't normal. This wasn't love. This wasn't partnership. This was control disguised as criticism, disrespect wrapped in casual words. And I had been living inside it for so long, I almost forgot who I used to be. But something else happened in that moment. Something quiet but powerful. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel confused. I felt aware. And awareness, that's where everything begins to change, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I knew then, this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of his biggest mistake. If the criticism at home was a slow burn, what he did in public was something else entirely. Because at some point, it stopped being private, and that's when it started to hurt in a way I couldn't ignore. The first time it happened, I told myself I was overreacting. We were at a small dinner with his coworkers. Nothing fancy, just casual conversation, soft laughter, glasses clinking. Someone asked how we divided responsibilities at home. Before I could even open my mouth, he leaned back in his chair, smiled, and said, "Oh, I handle most of it. It's easier that way." People chuckled lightly. I forced a smile. It wasn't what he said, it was how natural it sounded, like it was a well-rehearsed truth. I tried to brush it off. I really did. But then it happened again, and again. Each time the comments became sharper, more direct, less like jokes and more like statements. She tries, but I usually have to fix things after. I've learned not to rely on her for important stuff. It's okay, not everyone's built for responsibility. That last one. That one stayed with me, not because it was loud, but because it was said so calmly, so confidently, like he truly believed it, and worse, like he expected everyone else to believe it too. At first, people didn't question him. Why would they? He sounded convincing, relaxed, in control, and I, sitting beside him, looked quiet, reserved, unsure, exactly how he had trained me to look. That's the thing about public humiliation. It doesn't just happen in words, it happens in contrast. The more he elevated himself, the smaller I appeared, and slowly I started noticing the shift. People stopped asking for my opinion. They started directing questions to him instead of me. They interrupted me more, corrected me faster. Not because they were cruel, but because he had already set the narrative. I remember one moment so clearly, it still makes my chest tighten. We were at a family gathering. His relatives, loud and lively, all talking over each other. Someone asked about a financial decision we had recently made. I had actually handled most of it myself. I knew every detail. So I started explaining, but halfway through my sentence he cut in. No, that's not exactly how it happened. And just like that, all eyes shifted to him. He retold the entire situation, twisting small details, minimizing my role, positioning himself as the one who stepped in and fixed everything. I sat there, silent. Not because I didn't have the truth, but because I knew what would happen if I challenged him. He'd laugh it off, turn it into a joke, make me sound emotional, dramatic, confused. And somehow I'd end up looking worse, so I stayed quiet, and that silence, it cost me more than I realized, because every time I didn't correct him, his version became the truth. Not just to others, but slowly, dangerously to me, I started questioning my own memory. Did I really handle that? Maybe I missed something, maybe he's right, that's how deep it went. It wasn't just humiliation anymore, it was distortion. And the worst part, he never raised his voice, he didn't need to. Because humiliation delivered calmly, with a smile in front of others, cuts deeper than shouting ever could. By the time I fully understood what was happening, the damage had already spread. To outsiders, I looked like the dependent wife, the one who needed guidance, the one who couldn't quite keep up, and he looked patient, responsible, put together. That image he built, it was intentional, carefully crafted, one comment at a time, but what he didn't realize, what he completely underestimated, was that I was still watching, still listening, still remembering everything, because while he was busy controlling the narrative, I was quietly collecting the truth. And the thing about truth, it doesn't stay buried forever. Especially when the person you're underestimating finally decides to speak. Fire, he thought he had me figured out. He thought he had stripped me of any power, any control, any leverage, that calling me useless had made me small enough to never rise again. But he didn't know everything. Because while he was busy rewriting my reality in front of everyone, there was a truth he would never see coming. A truth my father had left me long before I even met him, a secret that was quietly powerful, waiting for the right moment, waiting for me to be ready. My father wasn't a man of loud gestures. He didn't hand out treasures in envelopes or parade wealth in front of people. What he left me was invisible, subtle, but worth more than gold. It was a plan, a set of instructions, a safety net that only someone who truly understood him could activate. I remember the day I discovered part of it. I was sorting through some old papers in my childhood room, the house my father had left me when I turned 18. Bills, old letters, dusty folders stacked neatly, and then I found a small box, locked with a key I had never seen before. Inside were documents, contracts, and letters, things that could change everything. Things that weren't just financial. They were strategic. He had left me the tools to protect myself. Tools to reclaim power. Tools that would expose those who underestimated me. And the irony? My husband, the same man who belittled me, dismissed my opinions, and publicly humiliated me, had no idea. To him, I was just the quiet, compliant wife. The one who hesitated before speaking, the one who allowed him to dominate the room. The one who, he thought, had no leverage, no inheritance, no secrets. But I did, and the knowledge of that secret changed something inside me, because power isn't always loud. Sometimes power is quiet, patient, waiting, watching. I began planning carefully. Not out of malice, but out of necessity. I couldn't let anyone control me any longer. Every step I took, every word I said, I calculated carefully. I was no longer reacting. I was preparing. The most important part, I never revealed the secret to anyone, not yet. My father had entrusted it to me, and it was mine to wield at the right moment. I started seeing the world differently. The small digs, the public humiliation, the constant questioning, it all became background noise. I realized it wasn't about me failing. It was about him feeling superior. Feeling safe in his illusion of control. And illusions, they always shatter. I remember the first time I realized just how powerful this secret could be. My father had left instructions for accessing accounts, property, and investments that were under my name but controlled by trusted advisors. Nothing flashy, nothing obvious. But everything had value, enough to completely alter my financial and social standing. More importantly, he had left letters. Letters detailing relationships, business dealings, and legal arrangements. Letters that revealed how to hold people accountable, how to ensure they couldn't dismiss me again. I held them in my hands, trembling, not with fear, but with realization. I could do something my husband would never expect. I could turn the tables. I could show him that the woman he thought was useless was actually untouchable. And that knowledge gave me something I hadn't felt in years, confidence. Because the truth, once discovered, doesn't just empower, it transforms. It gives you patience. It makes you see the long game. In the long game, that's where victory really lies. From that moment on, I stopped shrinking. I stopped apologizing. I stopped doubting myself. I wasn't just holding onto a secret. I was holding onto power. And one day, my husband would learn, just like everyone else, what happens when someone you underestimate quietly holds the key to everything. Because when the time comes, that secret isn't just a piece of paper. It's a weapon, a shield, and most importantly, it's proof that calling me useless was his biggest mistake. There's always a moment, the one that changes everything. The moment you realize you're no longer willing to tolerate the disrespect, the manipulation, the constant belittling. For me, that moment came quietly, but it hit like a lightning strike. It was an ordinary evening, or at least it appeared ordinary. We were hosting some friends at our house, nothing extravagant, just casual dinner and drinks. I had spent hours preparing, making sure everything was perfect, not because he asked me to, but because I wanted to show myself, and him, that I could. But of course, he couldn't let that go unnoticed. Halfway through dinner, as I was explaining a new project I had been managing at work, he interrupted. Not politely, not casually. "Let us be real," he said, smirking at the table. She probably didn't do much of that herself. I usually have to step in and make sure it's done right. The words landed like a punch. Not just because they were false, but because everyone around the table believed them, or at least pretended to. I froze. My heart raced. My fingers gripped my glass tightly. But this time, I didn't speak immediately. I didn't apologize, I didn't try to laugh it off, because something inside me had shifted. This wasn't just a joke anymore. This wasn't playful teasing. This was open humiliation, a public display meant to undermine me, to make me feel small in front of people I respected. And I realized in that moment that I wasn't going to take it anymore. I took a deep breath, letting the silence stretch for just a few seconds longer than comfortable. Every eye at the table turned toward me. Even he, with his smug grin, sensed the change in the air. "I think it's time someone told the truth," I said calmly, my voice steady, even as my chest felt like it was about to explode. He laughed nervously. "Oh. And what truth is that?" I smiled, just a little, enough to make him uneasy. "The truth that you've been trying to belittle me for years, in front of everyone, is exactly why you should have never underestimated me. You think calling me useless makes me small. It only made me stronger." The room went quiet. His friends shifted in their seats. Some looked shocked, some intrigued, and he was frozen. That smug confidence of his, the one he wore like armor, cracked for the first time. What are you talking about?" he asked, trying to maintain control, but it was weak. I didn't answer right away. I let him squirm for a moment, letting the tension stretch like elastic. I wanted him to feel the weight of every word he had thrown at me, the weight of every insult he had disguised as a joke, the weight of every time he thought he was winning. And then I said it. "You've been treating me like I'm nothing, and all this time, I've been holding the one thing you never thought I could. My father's secret. The thing you believed didn't exist. The thing that proves I am far from useless." He went pale. His fork trembled in his hand. He opened his mouth, probably to say something, but no words came out. The silence was deafening. For the first time, he was completely powerless. I realized then that crossing the line isn't about one insult or one comment. It's about consistently believing you're untouchable, that no one will ever challenge you. And the moment you push someone with a quiet, hidden strength too far, that's the moment you lose. Completely. That night, I didn't just take control of the room. I took control of the narrative. I didn't have to shout. I didn't have to prove myself to anyone. I simply revealed the shift, the unshakable truth that had been waiting to be revealed, and he felt it. For the first time, he realized the woman he thought he could belittle, manipulate, and humiliate wasn't the same woman he married. She had been silent, yes. She had been underestimated, yes. But she had also been preparing, watching, waiting, growing stronger with every slight, every public humiliation, every word meant to hurt her. And now the tables had turned. Because there's nothing worse than thinking someone is powerless, and then watching them rise. That night, I learned something powerful. The moment someone crosses your line, the line that protects your dignity and self-worth, that's the exact moment you stop being silent, and the moment they begin to lose everything. I knew the moment had finally arrived. Years of belittlement, humiliation, and silent observation had led to this. All the digs, all the public jokes, all the comments meant to shrink me, they had one fatal flaw. They underestimated the power of what I carried, my father's secret, the key he thought I didn't possess. It started with a meeting. My husband had been boasting again, showing off to his friends and colleagues, subtly making it clear who ran the household and who handled the finances. He thought I was invisible. That I couldn't touch anything he had built, but I had the truth, and the truth has a way of hitting harder than any insult. I took a deep breath and handed over the documents my father had left me. Contracts, letters, evidence of assets, investments, and legal protections he had set up specifically for me. Everything my husband had laughed at, mocked, or ignored suddenly became undeniable proof of my control, my independence, my strength. The room went silent. His friends, who had been smirking at my supposed incompetence, froze. Their laughter vanished. And he looked as if the air had been sucked from his lungs. "You see this," I said calmly, letting the weight of each word sink in. "This is what you didn't know. This is what you thought didn't exist. This is what proves that calling me useless was your biggest mistake." He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He tried to argue, to twist the situation, but the truth doesn't bend. It doesn't negotiate. It stands there, undeniable, and it demands recognition. I watched as his carefully crafted facade crumbled. The same man who had dominated every conversation, every argument, every social setting, couldn't even meet my gaze. He was silent, powerless, stripped of the superiority he had worn like armor for so long. And then came the subtle shift, the one I had been waiting for. His friends started asking questions. Simple, pointed questions. Wait, she actually controlled this. So all this time, she was in charge. The disbelief in their voices was almost delicious. I smiled, quietly, letting them feel the truth, letting him feel it. It wasn't just about proving him wrong. It was about reclaiming the respect that had been stolen from me. About showing that the woman he had underestimated, mocked, and humiliated was not only capable but untouchable. And the most important part, he had no defense, no charm, no excuses. Everything he had built on my supposed weakness was gone, all of it. That night, everything changed. Our dynamic, the way people viewed me, the way he viewed me, it all shifted in an instant. Power had a new owner. Respect had a new definition. And he was left with the bitter taste of realizing he had misjudged me completely. I didn't have to yell. I didn't have to dramatize. I simply let the evidence speak. Let the truth rise quietly, steadily, and completely overpower the lies he had told for so long. And that's when I understood something crucial. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It isn't about shouting. It isn't about confrontation. It's about patience, observation, and timing. It's about holding the truth and knowing the perfect moment to reveal it. By the time he understood the full scope of what I held, it was too late. The respect he had taken for granted, gone. The superiority he had flaunted, gone. The control he thought he had over me, shattered. And I finally felt free, not just from his insults, but from the fear that had kept me small for so long. Because in that moment, when the reveal was complete, I realized the most powerful thing a person can hold isn't wealth, or status, or control over others, it's the truth. The truth can humiliate, empower, and transform, all at once. And in that room, as I watched him process the reality he had ignored for years, I finally understood. Sometimes, the ultimate victory isn't just proving someone wrong. It's watching them finally see the woman they underestimated, and knowing she was unstoppable all along. If this story shocked you, make sure you hit that like button, because sometimes the truth really is stronger than anyone expects. And don't leave yet. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story where the powerless rise, secrets are revealed, and revenge is served in ways you'll never forget. Comment below, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you stay silent or wait for the perfect moment to reveal the truth? I read every comment, and your answer could inspire the next story. Remember, never underestimate someone quietly holding power.